After they had left the vault, the friends slept for several hours. Then, later in the day, they met to make their plans. "We are all in danger," Van Helsing said. "Dracula must know that he has enemies in England. He will soon find out what we are doing. Then he will attack us." "Why don't we attack him first?" Arthur cried. "We must go to his house together. Where is his house, Jonathan?" "I can't remember," Jonathan replied slowly. "It's very strange. I think Dracula has made me forget. All the papers about his house are in my office in London." "Then let us all go back to London quickly," said Van Helsing. "We must find out where Dracula is hiding. It will be safer if we are all together. The vampire is very powerful." They went to London, and Jonathan hurried to his office. But he could not find the papers. They had all been taken. He returned home at once. He told the others what had happened. "Dracula has taken the papers," Van Helsing said. "He knows he is in danger. He knows we are his enemies. But vampires have no power during daylight. In daylight, Dracula rests in one of the boxes from Transylvania. They must be in his house." "But where is his house?" Mina cried. The old professor thought for a moment. Then he looked at Jonathan carefully. "If you agree, I shall hypnotize you," he said. "Then you may remember where Dracula's house is." "Yes, I agree," Jonathan said. "Do what you can, Professor. I am ready." Van Helsing sat opposite Jonathan and spoke to him quietly. The young man's eyes closed. He began to breathe more slowly. "Count Dracula has a house near London. Where is it, Jonathan?" the professor asked. Jonathan answered in a slow, clear voice. "The Count is living to the east of London," he said. "His house is very big and very old. There is a high wall round it." "How did you get there, Jonathan?" asked Van Helsing. "The nearest railway station is about a mile away from the house." "What is the name of the station, Jonathan?" Van Helsing asked. "It is difficult to remember. There is a mist in front of my eyes. Now the mist is going. The name is Purfleet. The mist is coming back, a golden mist. I can see red eyes. They are looking for me." "Wake up, Jonathan," the professor said quickly. Jonathan opened his eyes. "You are in danger," Van Helsing said. "Dracula knew what I was doing. We do not have much time." "What shall we do?" Arthur asked. "We must get into Dracula's house and look for the boxes of earth," Van Helsing replied. "You must stay here, Mina. Don't leave the house. Dracula is not far away. Remember what happened to Lucy." "We cannot leave Mina here on her own," Jonathan cried. "She will be safe," the professor said. "No vampire can enter a house unless he is invited in. Lucy walked in her sleep, and Dracula met her in the churchyard. Stay in the house, Mina, and you will be safe." The three men left the Harkers' house in the afternoon. The things they needed were in their bags. They went by train. When they reached Purfleet Station, the professor asked a few questions. A man at the station was able to answer them. A tall, dark stranger had bought a big house not far from the station. Later, 50 huge boxes had been sent to the house. The stranger was living there alone. The three friends were sure that the stranger was Dracula. Very soon they were on the road to the house. As they walked, they became more and more tired. At last they reached the old house, but the daylight had almost gone. Van Helsing looked at his friends. "It is dark. We are late," he said. "Dracula will have left the house. While he is away, we will destroy his resting places." The high wall of the garden was broken in one place. They were able to climb it easily. The garden was silent and empty. The house was dark. At the back of the house they found a broken window. They were soon inside. The old house was full of dust. The air smelt unpleasant, and it was very cold. Every room was empty. Then, at the end of a long passage, they found a large wooden door. The key was in the lock, and Van Helsing turned it slowly. There was a terrible smell that reminded Jonathan of Castle Dracula. "This place smells of blood," Arthur West whispered. As he held up his lamp, rats ran away from the light. Some steps went down to the old chapel. There, on the cold, wet stones, were the wooden boxes. "Those are the boxes I saw in Castle Dracula," Jonathan said quietly. "We must work quickly," the professor said, opening his bag. "Dracula must not find us here. Inside every box we will place some holy bread. Then the vampire will be in our power." The men worked for many hours. One by one the boxes were opened. Then holy bread was placed on the earth inside. The lids were hammered down. The two young men worked together. Old Van Helsing stood by the open door at the top of the steps. He held a cross in his hand. Jonathan and Arthur had one more box to open. Suddenly Van Helsing gave a cry. "The Count! The Count!" he shouted down to them. "The vampire is coming back! We have no more time! Leave the last box and follow me!" One box was left unopened. Jonathan and Arthur ran up the stone steps and after the professor. As they reached the broken window, they heard a terrible cry. They turned quickly. Count Dracula was coming towards them. His face was white and angry. His eyes shone with red fire. When the vampire saw Jonathan, he jumped at him like a wild animal. But Van Helsing stood in front of Jonathan and held up his cross. Dracula stepped back. "You cannot stop me," he cried out. "I am Dracula. I have lived and fought my enemies for hundreds of years. I have fought armies. How can 3 men stop me now?" Suddenly the house was full of strange mist. The 3 friends got out of the window and ran across the garden. They found the broken part of the wall and climbed over. In the road, the air was clear. The moonlight shone on the men's white faces. "Come," said Van Helsing. "We must get back to Mina. She may be in danger." The 3 friends hurried to the little station. They caught a train to London. When they reached Jonathan's house, it was quiet. Jonathan unlocked the front door, and the 3 men went upstairs to their own bedrooms. Jonathan opened his door quietly, and then he gave a terrible cry. His friends ran into the room after him. The bedroom window was wide open, and moonlight was shining into the room. Mina was on the balcony, and a dark shape was leaning over her. It was Count Dracula. One of his hands held the back of Mina's neck, the other held down her hands. But the vampire was not drinking Mina's blood. No, it was more terrible than that. Dracula was holding Mina's face to a long cut on his chest. He was making her drink his blood. The vampire turned his head. His eyes burned with a terrible red light. Blood was dripping from his red lips and long white teeth. The vampire had already taken his meal of blood. Dracula gave a cry of anger, but Van Helsing was ready for him. The old doctor held his cross up high. A cloud covered the moon. It was suddenly dark. When the moonlight shone again, Dracula had gone. A little golden dust moved over the balcony. Poor Mina was almost mad with fear. When she saw Jonathan, she began to cry and cry. Van Helsing carried Mina back to the bed. Then he washed the blood from her face and neck. "My dear Mina," the old man said, "you are safe now. Can you tell us what happened?" "Oh, Jonathan, why did you leave me?" Mina cried. "I thought you were safe," Jonathan answered as he held his wife's hands. "I was asleep," Mina said. "I was dreaming. I saw a cloud of golden dust. I saw eyes burning with red fire." Something woke me. It was the sound of a child crying. When I got up, I saw something moving in the garden. I opened the window and walked out onto the balcony. Then suddenly, he was standing beside me. I saw his red eyes, his cruel mouth, and his long white teeth. I knew it was Count Dracula. He smiled and said, "Nothing can help you now. You are in my power." Mina covered her face with her hands. "Then he put his lips to my throat and drank my blood," she whispered. "I could not stop him. And now I have drunk his blood. I am a vampire too." "No, no," Jonathan cried. "It is the truth," Mina replied. "I have drunk the Count's blood, and I am in his power. I must do what he wants, even if I harm you, my husband." Then Mina looked at Van Helsing with tears in her eyes. "The vampire has won," she said. "No," Van Helsing cried. "He is afraid, I am sure of it. He cannot stay in England now. He will use the last box to return to his own country. Sleep now, Mina. You must rest." But Mina went on speaking. "I have drunk the Count's blood, and I am in his power," she said. "But perhaps we can use this power to destroy him. Hypnotize me, Professor, before dawn. I think I can tell you what the vampire plans to do." Van Helsing sat down beside Mina and moved his hand before her face. Her eyes closed. "Where is Count Dracula? What does he plan to do?" Van Helsing asked. "It is dark," Mina replied. Her voice was slow and clear. "I can hear moving water. Oh, the vampire's power is strong. But I hear a ship and men shouting. The ship is ready to leave. There is a mist. Darkness. I cannot tell you any more." In a few minutes, Mina had opened her eyes. "We have won," Jonathan told her. "The vampire is leaving England. We are safe now." But Professor Van Helsing shook his head sadly. "Have you forgotten? Mina has drunk the vampire's blood. He has drunk hers. If Mina dies before Dracula is destroyed, she will be a vampire forever." The picture sequence from the cinema